Hello, good evening. Good evening. Great to see everyone. I think I'm the man who Lulu and the women organizing committee sent up here to take responsible for the weather. So I think it's great to have you here. Thank you for coming in such full force to celebrate the 19th annual Women and the Critical Eye. You are a great audience and a great level of support. My name is Max Hollein. I'm the Renee McKee French Director and CEO of the Met. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's, of course, a flamboyant and energized crowd. It's really also a moment to celebrate the great contributions and also the unique experiences of women in the art world. We've been doing this every year with such great success, with so many insights, and also with a moment to kind of really think about what it means for the museum, what it means for museums in general, but especially also here for the Met. In that sense, also, it's a celebration of the role that women play here at the museum as artists, as people who work here in the museum, as staff members, as supporters, as volunteers, as dedicated friends. It's clear also that this museum is being carried on by a great force of female power. We have 53% women on our staff, 81% in leadership roles. 87% of our volunteers are women. So we see also a bright future in regard to our audience. And we have to confess that actually 54% of our audience are women, and it's a growing sector. So we really need to work on the men to kind of somewhat catch up on that. But I think it basically shows also, of course, of the attraction of this institution and also the way of how we can engage with art on that level. It is an ongoing priority, of course, of the Met to champion women artists in acquisitions as well as in exhibitions that we put forward, especially also in contemporary, and we're going to talk tonight about contemporary art in many ways, in regard to also contemporary commissions, how women artists really engage not only with the museum, but with the art of the time and how that kind of really kind of resonates within this building. And so we will soon have Lee Bull, the leading South Korean contemporary artist, transform the facade of the Met in September. We will have Tong Yang-tse, the doyen of Taiwanese art, in the Great Hall, doing one of her outstanding large-scale calligraphies, transforming the Great Hall. And then next year, Jenny C. Jones will be on the roof garden, so making one of her outstanding sculptures come to life there. We look forward to celebrating these and many other accomplishments with you all. So with that in mind, I'm honored to be here tonight as we celebrate and learn from two dynamic and visionary women in the arts, Sophia Cohen and Venus Williams. Both are renowned collectors. They are advocates of the arts and of artists. They are dedicated philanthropists, and we couldn't be more pleased to have them here tonight. They will be introduced more properly, for sure. I can only say we are extremely excited to have them. And obviously, if I can share one secret, at least one of them can play tennis very well. So we will think that this is, of course, a celebration also of what they stand for and what they do, being innovative, forward-thinking, dedicating also to building a better future and being part of an artistic development. And Sophia and Venus will be joined by Jane Panetta, the Aaron I. Fleischman Curator of Modern Contemporary Art. So Jane has just joined us very recently, has joined the Met team as an esteemed curator and a key voice in the development of the vision for the transformational Met's Oscar L. Tang and Agnes Shu Tang wing for modern and contemporary art. So before I turn things over, I want to especially thank Lulu Wang, trustee, longtime trustee and great founder of Women and the Critical Eye. This event certainly would not exist without you. And Lulu, it's your outstanding vision, your leadership, your generosity that makes this possible, and also making sure that you remind us always on the day after this event that there is another event coming up in 364 days that we need to take care of. And it's so fantastic to have you as an energetic leader and as such a wonderful supporter of everything that the Met does in so many ways. It is about gathering, and that's what this event stands for, and that's what Lulu has achieved, really. It's a gathering of a community of diverse women to connect basically with a shared love and engagement for collecting, for creating art, for the arts in general. And I want to thank, of course, also especially the 2024 Women and the Critical Eye Host Committee for this fantastic support, for the dedication, and for the collective commitment that's here in this room, and that really will help the museum move forward in so many fronts. So it's now my great pleasure to turn it over to Lulu. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, Max. Good evening. It is my absolute joy to welcome you all to our 19th anniversary of the Women and the Critical Eye. I am Lulu Huang, trustee emerita, and I'm called the founder of Women in the Critical Eye, but I really founded this wonderful series along with all the great women of the Met community, and so glad many of you are with us here tonight. It's actually overwhelming to think that we are approaching our 20th anniversary for next year, and to have seen this series of grassroots series grow and evolve so much since its founding. Our goal in the beginning was to create a vibrant space for women to share their experiences in the arts and to learn together and to encourage and inspire each other through discussions with their colleagues, collectors, curators, and artists. Each year, our community of discerning viewers grows, and we all share a common passion for our beloved Met. As always, we are proud to present a program that is free and open to all. We have been honored when many of you have asked us, can you personally support the Critical Eye and the Met in general, since the event is free? And we are truly touched by this for your friendship and your stewardship. And inspired by you, we have in recent years begun to direct a portion of our generosity, your generosity, towards the Met collection in support of acquisition by women artists. While women artists are beginning to make inroads more into great museum collections, they are still very well underrepresented. And so we're extremely delighted that at the Met, the progress has been very discernible. This year, your gifts to support our programs have totaled over $450,000. And these are gifts, not tickets sold. And it is truly extraordinary, and it does speak to the power of our women's community, as Max was mentioning. In recent years, your gifts have helped the Met help us acquire several impactful works and add to the collection of the Met. You'll see on the screen here the first gift that Women in the Critical Eye was able to contribute to, and that's Wangechi Mutu's Figure 3. She was part of a series that was the inaugural installation in the historic niches in the facade of the Met. And it was these figures, these women figures, who guarded the Met during the dark hours when the Met was closed, and were always offering a welcome as people walked by and kept waiting for those doors to reopen. Last year, our funds from the Critical Eye helped the Met to acquire a rare and striking painting by Rachel Roche, to your right. She was the most significant woman artist in the Dutch Republic during the 17th and 18th century. And she was very notable because women were not particularly encouraged to be major painters or portraitists. But she was determined she was going to have a portrait and she was going to be a part of it. So in this case, she tapped a friend to help work on the painting with her, but really the refinement and the finesse of this painting is so much due to her eye. And we're so grateful that she was leading the way for women even in those days. Now, more recently, the critical eye supported the acquisition of an incredible stained glass window from 1912, created in the studios of Louis Comfort Tiffany. This window truly speaks of women's power. This window was commissioned by a woman of means named Sarah Cochran. It was designed by a woman, Agnes Northrop, one of the leading window designers in her day. And finally, it was crafted by Tiffany's skilled artisans, most of whom were women. So it is a perfect work of art for the women of the critical eye to support, and you will see it installed in the American Wing later this fall. Well, I mentioned that the painting by Rachel Roche is now on display in our newly installed Northern European galleries. So go by and visit Rachel. I'm also very, very grateful to my fellow trustees and extraordinary host committee members who have played such an important role in the success of the critical eye. Of course, we want to thank all the women and the men who staff the Met. The level of professional commitment and love of the arts suffuses the entire team at the Met. Our security men and women who carefully guard our art and our visitors, they all have college degrees. They are often had successful careers, but then they choose to retire or mid-career come and help us at the Met. So we're so grateful for them. Now, it is my honor to introduce our guest speakers this evening. Sophia Cohen and Venus Williams, two extraordinary women and avid collectors. They will be joining the ranks of the brilliant and dedicated women who have participated in the eye in the past. They also happen to be good friends. And I was telling Sophia before this program started is that I was pleased to notice that just an hour ago that she's also a classmate of my goddaughter. So we truly live in a small world, all connected by art. Sophia is also a very well-respected and avid collector, a passionate champion of artists, and an associate director at Gagosian Gallery, and in her spare time, a noted philanthropist. Venus Williams, as we all know, is an American tennis legend, but also a cutting-edge entrepreneur and a dedicated collector and arts advocate. Now, she was already a very big name in sports, but when the film King Richard, the Oscar-winning film celebrating her extraordinary father and his life-changing impact on his talented daughters came out, Venus truly became a living legend. She became an inspiration to every young girl passionate about tennis and needing to find her own way. If any of you have time afterwards, go to Netflix or Amazon Prime and watch King Richard. It's a fabulous movie. It's about family and passion. Our guest today will be in conversation with Jane Panetta, our Aaron I. Fleischman curator in the Department of Modern and Contemporary Art, who, as Max just mentioned, has recently joined us in February. She comes to us from the Whitney, and where she was the Nancy and Fred Pose's curator and director of collection. Now it is my extreme pleasure to welcome Sophia, Venus, and Jane. Thank you so much.
Good evening. We're so happy to be here. Lulu, thank you so much, and Max, for the wonderful introduction. I'm being signaled to grab my microphone. Thank you for that, Max. Lulu, thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm so happy to be here with Sophia and Venus. We are all obviously very excited. I think before we get started, and I promise not to talk long at all, I just want to acknowledge how excited I am to sit down and talk about collecting. I think I've so often been in conversation with artists about exhibition, about art history more generally, but I think collecting is such a key piece of the art ecosystem, and the both of you are such powerful and strong voices within that. So this feels like a wonderful opportunity to kind of surface that essential piece of the art world, if you will. And also thinking about doing that in the space of a museum. Museums, of course, are built on collections, on individuals, many of them built on the collections of women. So I think this feels like a really wonderful place to be having this conversation, and with both of you, and to kind of surface the ambitious and wonderfully disruptive, I would say, ways both of you are thinking about collecting. So we will get to that. I just want to acknowledge that right from the outset before we get started. So to begin, let's begin at the beginning, if that's okay. Bear with me while I'm navigating all the pieces of the puzzle here. And I want to talk to you both about what got you started and interested in collecting in the first place. Was there a particular work of art, an anecdote, an event? What was it that kind of got you excited to become a collector and dig in with this?
Okay, well, hi. I would say I grew up around art. I mean, I grew up in Connecticut, and obviously I would come to the Met, and I was surrounded by art in my family collection. And I would say the minute I realized I was intrigued in art as a topic that I wanted to explore for a career is when I saw the Degas ballerina, which lives here as well. And as I was growing up, I would measure myself against the ballerina, as a young girl taking ballet, and kind of that self-referential, and then also kind of this idea that it was a broad enough theme that it impacted more than just me, kind of made me realize how broad the reach was with art. And I remember I collected my first kind of very silly play on Liechtenstein piece from a local fair in Greenwich, and I spent $500 on it, and everyone was like, oh my God, like, it was a lot of money to spend. When I was 13, I took all my, piggy bank out, and it still hangs in my bedroom. So that was my first collecting moment.
For me, hi everyone, good evening. It's so nice to see all the seats filled, especially with this weather, right? But thank you guys for coming and supporting women in art, supporting the Met, supporting us tonight. But for me, obviously I'm an athlete. I grew up playing sports. I don't even remember learning how to play. I started playing tennis at 4 years old. So that was always my path. That was always the plan. But my parents always encouraged us to know who we were outside of the court. And for the rest of my life, I will always be this part. I'll be 80 years old with a cane talking about, I'm so much better than that girl. And, that's just how it is. And I know I'll be that person. But my parents encouraged us to know who we were off of the court. So with that, over time, I started to realize I love the arts. So I started to pursue the arts in fashion and interior design. And at some point, I had a lawyer and both of his sons were in the arts. And I just said, I really want to collect. And I said, where do I start? And so that's really how I started, was just asking someone, what do I do? How do I get started? And one of my, I remember I had this chance to design a racket. And at the time, one of my favorite artists was Gustav Klimt. And so the whole racket was based off the Kiss. And I saved those rackets, of course. You change rackets, technology changes, but art never does, and that racket means like the world to me.
Okay, so love hearing about how you started. Will you talk a little bit now about, you've both been collecting for a while now, those collections have developed. Are there certain, and there may not be, this is fine too, but are there certain kind of strands or themes or things that kind of you're realizing now are bubbling up in your collection, things you gravitate towards, artists? Would love to hear about that a little bit.
I mean, I try to steer away from themes in art. I think that especially when we're looking at young artists, it's easy to, or even young collectors, it's easy to be like, that's my path. I collect just women artists. I collect just Middle Eastern art, or I collect, abstract. And I think that I tend to just I look at a piece of art, a new artist, and I say, okay, can I see another historical artist in it? And that's actually a really big positive towards what I'm looking for because it shows a lot of depth. And I do that. And so I look at my collection. I have abstract, I have figurative. I actually tend to collect more female artists, but it's not something that I'm even asking the sex or gender or anything of a person before I'm, buying. But I could see that my personal experience brings me closer towards women artists.
Yeah. Venus, what about your collection?
Yeah, for me, I don't like to be put in a box personally, and that can happen, especially for me in the sense that in trying to transition my career, my life, I don't think that you should put art in a box. I think art at its purest should not be ever put in a box. And I think today, I think it's so important to pay attention to women artists or other groups that have been marginalized, because we don't want to continue that. But at the same time, we have to be careful with labels. And when the more we start to label people, the more that we start to put them in a box. So I think we have to be really careful. And for me as an African American, I don't want to be expected to have to only collect African American art, or for African Americans to only be able to produce certain subject matters. And so for me, it's important to never label art. I don't label it. For me, I collect what I believe in. I collect what makes me happy. I collect on an aesthetic level. I collect on a level if there are references made that are beautiful, and that's always exciting. I collect if I believe in someone technically. So there's a lot of different reasons why, but I don't allow myself to go into the box. And I don't think we ever do. If we start labeling too much, then we go back to where we were. Yeah. And we should never do that.
I agree.
Keep it very open. So you were hinting at this a little bit, Venus, but your process for collecting and learning about art, and I've read you both talk about this a little bit in interviews, and I know there's kind of a range of ways you approach this, but how do you find and learn about art you're interested in? And something I'm very particularly interested in is getting to know artists. Do you get to know artists? Do you do studio visits? How does that kind of fit in to your process of collecting?
Well, just an anecdote. Venus and I are talking back there about how insane our schedules are. And I'm sure if it were up to us, we'd go to artist studios every day. But the reality is, I think the way I look at it is more, social media has been an amazing asset to looking at art for me personally. I get to see what people I, admire, what they're posting. I mean, I feel like we look at each other's Instagrams, we see, oh, what is she looking at right now? And I think that when you create a community around that you actually believe their eye and like their taste, then, that it's a great platform to do that. But also old school, just, running around, going to Chelsea, doing the, serpentine loops and popping in, maybe seeing something you're not used to. And also just, I'm really lucky I live in Los Angeles now, and obviously I miss New York very, very much. But in LA, a lot of young galleries thrive, and I get to really see, them at the start of their career, which has been a really nice plus to being there. And also a lot of artist studios are out there, and it makes it a lot easier to kind of see what's going on versus New York, where not many artists can continue to afford living here. So, I think it's a really big mix. It depends on my scheduling and how free I am, but ideally I get to know the artists and see their practice a little bit through and through.
Yeah, I'm actually very shy, and I know it may not seem like it, but so for me to go into an artist space, I feel like I'm disruptive, but I want to, and I've started to, and getting to know people. For me, in the beginning, just in terms of collecting, I really didn't know what I was doing. I even for years I didn't have any sort of formal education. I was really just collecting what I thought was beautiful and what really resonated with me. And it wasn't really until I was just having dinner with someone, and they were like a producer, and they're like, "Yeah, I really like this artist, And I said, "What do you mean? How do you know them?" And it wasn't until that point that I realized what I was collecting, and I was like, okay. So at that point, I decided to educate myself, and I don't have an art advisor. I have to be my own advisor, and it forces me to do my own work. So I have to do my own research. I have to do my own study. I watch auctions. I read books. Even just looking at other galleries, having people to talk to is the best part, I think. So I've just kind of created my own educational system. And I think most of us do. Most of us don't go to school for art, the smart ones do, but most of us are just hacking our way through, right? You know, one hack at a time. And either, you know, you learn or you don't. And I've just taken that route.
But just to point out there, Venus and I actually went to Silver Arts, you know, the residency 2 years ago, or was it last year? And we were on the committee this year to decide who the next residency was. And that was a really interesting way to see young artists. I thought so. And we got to kind of decide what the next cohort was. So another great way to see young artists is residency programs. So
Definitely. Yeah. Can I put you guys on the spot a little bit with three slides that we have? These are paintings
than it was before.
of you guys. This is an incredible Anna Wyant double portrait of you. Sophia, will you talk a little bit about?
Yeah.
I'm so interested when I saw this painting. Two things I love. So all three of the slides I'm going to show are double portraits of both of you, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
I think it speaks to like the many hats you both wear potentially. But I'm really curious about the genesis of this painting. The conversations that maybe led up to it.
Anna is a close friend of mine. I've gotten to know her prior to her joining Gagosian and had been a big admirer of her work. And I couldn't even get one for myself. It was very annoying, so I had to befriend the artist. And in that process, she looked at me and was like, this is a little strange, but it was during COVID, and it was, again, prior to Gagosian. She was like, do you mind if you sit for me? I think you have a face that reminds me of, other people I've drawn and painted, so do you mind? And I was like, sure, this is great. So I actually sat for her for weeks, and we drank wine and got to know each other, and it was just such like a nice experience of getting to know an artist in such an intimate way, and also looking at her and being like, wow, we're just two young women trying to figure it out, and we're at the start of our careers. And granted, very quickly her career went in an insane direction, and soon I realized I was actually going to be the biggest image of the show of the gallery that I worked at, which I didn't really have on my bingo card, but it was great.
This is a very large painting, just to be clear.
What?
This is a very large painting.
Yeah, and anyways, so this is the birth of this painting, and she asked me, she was like, listen, I am looking for other models. Like, do you have anyone that you think could fit the bill on this? And I said, because it was like the show was might have been like a little more acrobatic in the beginning, and I was like, honestly, like my friend Venus would be perfect for this. Do you mind if I set you guys up? And lo and behold, you want to share
Venus,
kind of how
talk
that
about these two paintings a little bit?
Yeah, Sophie really hooked me up. It was I went into it like, oh my gosh, this is great. I've peaked in the art world now. Someone has made a portrait of me, thank God. And all I could think about when I saw the portrait was like, why didn't I do my hair different? I would have gotten my makeup done and my hair. I didn't know what was going to happen. I was just happy to be there. And, we took photos, and Anna gave me candy, which is my soft spot. You
got candy, I got wine. Feels
yes,
right.
I will sell anyone and anything out for candy. So anyway, she gave me candy. She gave you wine. She knows our weak spots. And it was just a great experience in general. And I'm so grateful to have had that. And Anna's an unbelievable artist. Like, her technique is just huge. It just blows your mind. It makes you you sit there and you stare and you see her get better each time and evolve. And the exciting part is seeing an artist evolve. That is a beautiful and powerful thing. So that's what she's doing. And I'm just excited for what she'll bring to the art world. And we know, seeing women artists, having record auctions and things like that, that's exciting to see, long overdue. And, I hope Anna will be able to inspire another group of artists and collectors.
Yeah, and just like on the topic of being women, like she only paints women. So, and she's a woman painting women. So I think that a lot of people wanted to knock her down, make her draw comparisons to, John Curran and other portrait artists. And I think the reality is, like, she has the most unique perspective of them all, being a woman. So I think she's a perfect, I think she was going to come for a little bit. I don't know if she's like hiding in the back somewhere, but we have her spirit in here regardless.
Venus, will you just touch on the beautiful Rob Pruitt painting that's here as well? Another double portrait.
Yeah, so Serena and I were selected to be in the National Portrait Gallery, which after, especially this happened after Anna, I said, "You're kidding, what's happening?" And when I thought I peaked, and I was like, "Oh my God, how did this happen?" So super great year for my family, and then comes the difficult process of who in the world to select. And thankfully, I had some help and ended
We
up.
walked around a little bit. We
Yeah, we
chatted.
walked around, we chatted, we traded ideas,
Yeah.
and I ended up working with Robert because I just thought he got me. I loved his references that he makes,
Yeah.
even the ones that are just personal for him, and the things that he repeats in his work. And the first thing I wanted to do was I was like, I want to put my whole family in it, and he said, "No, it's a portrait." I said, "Okay." So we get in there, and I had to find a way to put my family in there because to reach that in my life, I never thought that was going to happen. I was just trying to win a match or two, the three, or all of them. But, I didn't know this would come with it, and you do not get there alone. And I just wanted to pay reference to the people who got me there. And so there's references in here to my family, to Compton, there's the Watts Towers, there's all of my sisters, there's Billie Jean King, there's Althea Gibson, all the people who paved the way for me. I mean, Billie Jean started the tour because there was literally no place for women to play, and the men didn't want us, and they had to do something. Althea Gibson slept in her car. She couldn't, someone had to write a letter for her so she could enter the US Open in Wimbledon. There were a lot of people who paved the way for me, and I wanted to show that. So there's definitely lots of references. Very Robert Pruitt. It's hidden, but it's there.
Yeah, these are all three of these are so amazing to me. They're very conceptual as portraits, which I really like. So I wanted something that you guys have touched on a little bit with doing the residency together. For example, is hear from you guys a little bit about your friendship, and the thing that I was thinking about and kind of struck me about it is, embarking on collecting, learning about art can be challenging. It can be daunting, as you guys have already intimated. There's no guidebook on how to do it. The landscape is overwhelmingly large and global. So even for me personally as a curator, I love having friends or curators to kind of talk about ideas. So I'd love for you guys to talk a little bit about your friendship, which sounds like, from talking to you before and what you said today, has really been an important piece of your personal journeys as collectors.
Yeah, I mean, Venus and I met super randomly through a mutual friend. And the next day you came over to my house and met my whole family, which seems strange now, but it really wasn't weird in the moment. And we immediately clicked. We're both very silly. We both look at life as abundance and kind of what can we do with our time versus, we need to sleep or rest. We're both the busiest people I think I know. And with art, it was kind of, I don't think we come at it pretentiously, which I think is how we connected on it. And just being able to bounce ideas off of each other and also be muses together, work on, the silver arts thing together. It's always been like, what can we do more together versus this is my lane, this is your lane. I think it becomes a collaborative space between us really quickly, whatever topic we're talking about, or and then it quickly devolves into being very silly, and then we get back on topic. But I've really cherished our friendship. So yeah.
Yeah, what I love about Sophie, she's a straight shooter, and I love to be around them and to watch them. It's a lot of
Scary.
entertainment. So, with popcorn, like, what did she just say? I love that about you. And we did hit it off quickly, and I think you've been so kind to me and just have included me in so much. This is not necessarily my world, and here I am, just kind of taking my first steps in a lot of ways. And learning about art can be intimidating, especially for someone like me. I like to know everything immediately, and you just can't. And a part of it is just enjoying that journey of learning over time. Before you know it, you've learned a lot, and it's time invested, especially if it's your passion. And there's so much to be passionate about with art. A world without art is just not a world, right? And once we have art in our lives, everything gets so much bigger. That's how I feel about it. So it's great to have folks like Sophie inviting me to her house and giving me a hand.
Will you guys like recommend shows that you've seen to one another, or send pictures of things, or do you do studio visits together ever?
I feel like going back to being super busy, I think anytime we have a chance to share and be involved, we are, but I think social media has been super helpful for that. Just like you'll send me, who is that? And I'll say like, who is that back? And there's a lot of that. And it's the best way for two people that run around the world as much as we do.
So now I want to ask you both each a specific question based on things that I'd read and that we had talked about a little bit. Sophia, I'm so interested in, and because you talk about this, your background in archaeology, and kind of how that connects to what is obviously your deep commitment to art and artists. And I'm curious if there are ways, and I know Jonas Wood is an artist, for example, that you admire a great deal. But are there ways that kind of archaeological background that you have, that lens comes to bear on how you collect, or how you think about building a collection?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like it's funny, I'm sitting here and I'm just like trying to be relaxed and easy like I usually am. But, for me, this is like a very big deal starting as an archaeologist and now working in art. The Met is like my mecca. I get to see both, and in my perfect world, like I'd live in this place. And so it's like such an honor to be here. And, this feels like a imposter syndrome, like I'm not even here. But if we want to go back to the Venus of Willendorf and the Jeff Koons slide, it kind of is like a perfect example of kind of exactly those two things, which is you're dealing with one of the first human-made objects ever found, a fertility object, and you're dealing with a contemporary artist that is, taking that imagery. And obviously, if you know Jeff Koons, there's like a lot of sexuality, and reproductive stuff is sexual. And so he's taking that kind of image of fertility and using it in kind of these like mirrored series he's done. But that's just a prime example. But yeah, I mean, I was an archaeologist. I lived in Turkey with a research grant from Brown. And this is just a very funny anecdote that my pitmate, who was a graduate student at the time, at the end of the day, comes up to me and he's like, I'm just going to be honest with you. Can you come over here for a second? It was the end of the time. I'm like, yeah, what's going on? He goes, I don't think you should apply to grad school for archaeology. You talk way too much to be an archaeologist. He was like, I timed you one time and you talked for 40 minutes straight with absolutely no stopping.
Aww.
And I was like, oh my God. And he was like, this is a really quiet and lonely lifestyle, and you're way too personable to do this. So my advice is to go into a client-driven business. And I said, fair enough. So I honestly, it resonated, and I didn't even take it personally. We're still friends. He's great. I was a little bit shocked in the moment. And I ended up getting my master's in art. And I got my master's at Christie's Education. And if you go to the Heiser slide, I actually wrote my master's thesis.
I wanted to say something about this.
I wrote my master's thesis on Michael Heiser and how his father, as an archaeologist, influenced his artwork. And so I talk about levitated mass, which is a transport of objects, kind of what we do in museums, bring objects to different locations, and kind of how do they live up or change when they're there. I did double negative, which is an excavation. So he was kind of playing on the idea of his father excavating. And then I did city, which is the final step of monumentality, of kind of having something that will live past, your life and your generation. I actually got to go see City, and I slept over there, and I was with Michael Heiser and Michael Govan, and I was like, this is the peak of my life. And my poor now fiance, I looked at him, I was like, you really should have proposed here, but it's fine. We're not going to make a big deal out of it, but this would have been a really great moment. But anyways, so I work at Gagosian, and Michael Heiser's an artist there, and it just feels like things happen for a reason. And I never once let go of my archaeological mindset and kind of the love of artifacts and collecting and human objects. So it's always with me, and I'm still really close to a lot of the people from my site and just in general from the academic community. So I hold a lot of respect for this place and the people that are, downstairs, cleaning with toothpicks and things and making sure that these objects are preserved forever. Yeah. So yeah, that's my backstory.
I just want to say I love that this work spoke to you so much, and that you wrote your thesis on this work. Is that right?
Yeah, it was one of the 3 works. Yeah.
This is like maybe one of the most challenging works that's been made in contemporary art in some ways, like made over such a long period of time. A difficult thing to go see in a difficult location. It says a lot to me that this is a work that spoke to you so much. Venus, I want to ask you about a quote that you have that, and I know this is an artist that you're interested in. There's a beautiful quote in an interview you did when you said that acquiring art can feel very emotional. And that really struck me as a powerful and very particular and specific idea. I think, I've heard people talk about it feeling challenging, frustrating, but the idea of it being emotional felt like a different thing and a very particular thing. And you've said it in other interviews in maybe a slightly different way. Will you just talk about that a little bit and why it feels that way, if you're comfortable, and what that idea means to you?
Yeah, well, this is Braden Hollis, young, very talented artist. I don't know if she's here today. Maybe she's here somewhere. But, my first love was collecting, new artists, young artists, emerging artists. Very exciting to be right there on the ground, seeing what's happening. And I always keep that as my base. And I think over time you do realize it's emotional because there's something inside of you that connects to this piece, especially if you're collecting your own pieces and not necessarily like sending somebody out to do it. There's no right or wrong way. But in any case, it is emotional because you start to connect to it. And I don't think I really realized how emotional it was for me until there was this one point where there was a piece that I wasn't sure I was going to get. And like for 24 hours, I was just on the edge, like not happy. I had to go plead my case. I started to make up reasons why I should get the work. It became outrageous. But eventually when I got it, I was on a high, like, for weeks. And that's when I realized, the emotional enjoyment that I was getting from not only collecting these pieces, but living with them. There's no greater joy than being able to live with a piece. And after a while, when you start to collect more and more works, you can't live with all of them. But then the ones you're living with, you get attached to, and it's hard to change them out. It all becomes very emotional. And if the work you're not collecting isn't making you feel that way, maybe you aren't doing the right things.
Yeah, that's sort of a signal that you should be doing it, and you're doing it in a meaningful way. I like that idea a lot. So, as I intimated before, we're so happy to have you here as a new generation of collectors, and also I think I used the word disruptive. You guys thinking about collecting and being a collector, let's say, in the world in particular ways, and how can I use that productively? So I want to put you on the spot a little bit, if you don't mind, and have you talk about how you think about that impact you're having as a collector, maybe both in terms of artists and how it can represent supporting artists. You guys have talked about emerging artists a little bit already, but then also the impact you might be having in the art world more broadly. And Venus, I've obviously put this Nina Simone project up here, so maybe we can get to that. But we'd love to hear about this question of impact and how you both think about that, because I know you do.
It's so funny. I actually set up Venus with Pace for this project, right? I made the connection with Mark. I can't remember, but you'll talk about that. That's your domain. For me, I think it's something that like I've had to think about more conceptually, is that because I'm in the art world, not just as a collector, but I'm also in it as my job. Like, what's that fine line between, like, I don't know, just like making sure I'm staying true to myself and making sure I'm respecting artists and, also being involved in the for-profit space of it. And I think that that's a bigger question. And, my impact is, and I know a lot of my colleagues are in here, or people that I've worked with, or there are other people that are in the for-profit space, I would say that I treat a lot of people with respect, and I treat artists with respect. I buy things with the intention of taking care of them and not with the intention of, selling them when they get really big. And I think that responsibility, while maintaining, my own career path, is something that I value, that I hope that I do a lot. And, as I continue to grow, it definitely becomes more complicated, but you get more sure in yourself and kind of what you're doing in the world. And I would like to think I'm helping young artists, realize themselves. I'm helping young collectors figure out what they love. And I'm also, trying to be a good person in between.
Yep.
Oh, the Nina Simone house. That was super special, and yeah, that connection. Sophie's my art whisperer. She definitely made that connection, and it was very special for me because, in the sense that there are not a lot of historic monuments from African Americans that are preserved. They're often forgotten, and they're a beautiful fabric of American history. Let's leave the African part out, right? So. More attention definitely needs to be given to that, and so to be able to be part of that project with Adam Pendleton too, like when we finally met, like everybody wondered like we were nuts. We just hugged each other because we loved each other already, and we had never met. So and his mom was there and his sister was there, and it was just such a strong connection. He's such a beautiful person, and that was such a beautiful night with such a wonderful cause, and it just shows you the impact that art can make, and also how wonderful the art world is and how generous everyone is. So there are definitely ways to get involved at this level, but also grassroots level too. There's so many people who may not understand the power of art, and that hopefully that power and that knowledge can start at a young age. So I think at a grassroots level, that's when it really has the most power, is introducing people to the arts at a young age.
I like your belief that you both have in kind of the power of art is very infectious. I appreciate it so much. Venus, will you just talk a little bit more about this project, this initiative for the audience, just so people know this is Nina Simone's childhood home in North Carolina that you really helped galvanize the support for?
Yeah, Nina Simone was an important figure in civil rights, and she spoke out when a lot of other people wouldn't, and it affected her career greatly, where a lot of artists didn't take that leap, and she ended up really losing out on a lot of opportunities for what she thought was right. So her career is very complicated and complex, but at the end of the day, she's a great American figure, and we wanted to preserve this house. So Adam Pendleton teamed together with Pace to do an auction to raise money to preserve the house, not only now but in years to come. So so many great artists came together to do something great and amazing, and those things are super powerful.
Yeah, that was amazing. I mean, it was a smashing success.
Definitely, and I think will be a wonderful model for other such things going forward. So really, congratulations. So given where we are, I wanted to ask you guys a little bit about museums and kind of how you think about museums and how you see, we're talking about kind of different ways you guys have been able to affect change. But how can museums think about creating meaningful change? How can that play out through collectors, through artists, through programs? Kind of what do you guys think about that?
Well, I think Venus said it really well in the beginning of just making sure that these spaces for marginalized or different groups of people are created in these kind of historic spaces where maybe they weren't as prevalent before. And I think museums are actively doing that. And I think that ironically in a museum like this, where you have so many histories within a building, you have so much to work with. And the idea that you can kind of bridge the gap between old and new and kind of bring in some of those objects and bring it in with contemporary works and kind of see where the through line is, I think is going to be the future, and luckily the Met already has a giant head start. But yeah, I think that, fostering young collectors, I'm part of a bunch of young groups. I'm chair of the YCC at the Guggenheim, which actually the money goes to collecting things that actually make into the permanent collection, which I think is amazing. For example, we had I just heard this yesterday, so this is my first reference, is Jamian has a show, Gagosian, now, and Jamian's work was a work that we collected for the YCC for the Guggenheim like 10 years ago. So
Wow.
it's always cool to see an artist come to like their big moment at a big gallery and know that you had a part of that in the beginning. And that's rare. There's not many groups like that. And then I'm starting a new group with LACMA, which is more of an older group of global ambassadors, kind of making sure that a museum like LACMA that, you know, sponsored the Heiser Project and all Levitated Mass, the things that I personally am passionate with, have a global outreach, you know, and friends that participate. So there's so many ways to get museums to kind of get involved. And, you know, luckily in New York City, people love going to museums. So it's a culture around that, but there's always ways to evolve. And I think that if you don't try to evolve or try to, you know, get more people in the museum or excited about what's going on, then museums would be a moot point at a certain point.
I think Sophie, you said it great. I don't have anything else to add.
Okay.
Mic drop.
I'm just gonna put this slide up here in case this prompts you to want to add anything else. This is Venus
Before
at
I
the
started
amazing
eating
Lauren Halsey
cookies.
installation.
Oh my God.
Take me back. This was such a great day. Lauren Halsey is actually from near where I'm from, and I remember seeing this work, and it said tennis lessons, Venus and Serena, something like this. And those signs used to be around LA. I never gave one lesson, but
Not yet to me, but
those were like a real thing. And so she's taking all these different motifs from the past history, from her own environment, and creating this. Last summer, the rooftop installation was just out of this world. She's super special. So I got to come here with Hannah and my friend Ari too. We got to come to the roof. It was a great day.
and it's coming to LA. She's bringing it back home.
Yeah, she's going. It's
Which is
going
great.
back to the
So,
community. So
yeah.
yeah, she's a wonderful person.
Yeah.
Okay, as advertised and as promised, we're going to do a lightning round set
This
of
was Venus's
questions.
idea.
Okay, so
You don't know the questions.
you'll each get to answer these, but I feel like these are things I'm secretly very curious about the answers to. So, who is the first artist you remember meeting in person?
Mine was probably Jeff Koons,
Interesting.
which was a fascinating first meet. But
Powerful first
yeah,
meeting.
I didn't know what was going on, but I was happy to be there.
Oh no, I don't even remember. That's a good question. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
If I remember, I'll tell you later.
You may have alluded to this at some point, not specifically, and you may not want to share, but I'm curious about, is there some artwork that got away that you kind of continue to think about that? I've had that experience as a curator for sure. So is there something that's kind of stayed with you for a while that, I should have gone for it?
I showed my dad Jonas Wood very early on, and I got him to buy 2 paintings, and I should have just, I was in college, I was young, that would have been a big amount of money for me, and I didn't do it, and now I'm like, damn it, but whatever.
Yeah, I have a similar Jonas Wood story. I don't know why I didn't. I meant to, and I didn't. I blame it on tennis balls.
Okay, that's fair.
I always say I got the tennis ball fuzz in my head, and I forgot that I was going to do it, and then years pass before you know it, and
Luckily, Jonas is a friend, so
Yeah.
we'll have opportunity.
but I think when you're walking through shows or whatever, you see a lot of woulda, shoulda, couldas. I finally found peace last year. You know how Lieutenant Dan, he was on that show, and he finally found peace after the storm. That I finally found mine. It feels so good when you don't have to look back and say, "I wish."
I'm almost there. I'm not
I've
there
let
yet.
it go. You let it go.
I gotta let it go.
A smart
I'm gonna
philosophy.
leave it here in this room. All right, you heard it here first.
Okay, in the past year, an exhibition, gallery show, museum show that really had an impact on you that you've kind of kept thinking about.
I mean, Rothko, that was like insane. Seeing all those atmosphere works with no glass in front of them.
At the Vuitton
I mean,
Foundation. Yeah.
that was out of control. Yeah, at LVMH, it just closed. It was magical. Like, it was profound. It was. I'm going to be very shocked to if that's going to be another show like that ever again.
Yeah, I didn't get to see that, unfortunately, and I think it was in D.C. or is it still there?
No, it was in Paris.
No, but there was one, or
There's a show in DC also.
I
Yeah.
didn't make it. My
Different one.
sister lives there. I should be there. But regardless, this summer I went to the Hague in the Netherlands, and I went to see a lot of works by gosh, now I have a horrible memory. What's the name? Do you know the name?
In The Hague.
Yes. But anyway, it was very moving for me. I remember that. I can't remember anything. It's so bad. You know when you know it, but you can't remember it. It's so bad. But anyway, Mondrian, there it is.
Oh, there you go.
Oh,
Great.
yes.
I shouldn't
Oh, yeah,
forget
was in
that.
there,
But
yeah.
yeah, it was just a beautiful experience, just going there and seeing so many works. And you're right there, so there's a lot. And I hadn't seen that many together before, so it's nice sometimes when you get to be right there in the place where there's a lot of works preserved by that particular artist. So I got obsessed with Mondrian. I bought the book and
Yeah,
was
and there
reading
are
more and more.
there are earlier works too, and later
Yes.
works there. It's nice to see that
Yeah.
trajectory. Okay, so next question. Aside from the Met, because I'm sure that would be your answer, your favorite museum to visit?
I love 3 museums. So I love the Byler in Basel. I love the Louisiana, the Amsterdam, or Copenhagen.
Almabach,
That's
yeah.
what I'm Copenhagen. And I did a trip to both those places, so I'm getting confused. And then the Glenstone. I think they all have very similar
Mhm.
energies to them. That's why I like them. But yeah, those are my 3.
Yeah, more modest scales too.
Yeah, I get to come to New York a lot, so it's wonderful because there's always something amazing to see here. I've come here a lot too to see different exhibitions. 2 last year, the time that I get, and sometimes I miss it. It's just too busy. I really like my local museums too. I like to support the local. The
Mhm.
Norton in West Palm Beach is small but mighty.
amazing.
And even in Miami as well, we've got some. Florida's new. We're still catching up, but I really am proud of what we're
The
doing down
ICA
there.
is doing a lot. They've
Yeah.
got a good
Yeah, the
amount of stuff
ICA.
going on,
Yeah. Yeah, so I try to take advantage of what's local to me too.
If there was an emergency and you had to grab a work from your collection and kind of run out of your house with, is there a work that you could land on?
I mean,
We have 2 hands, so there's 2 works.
Two,
Yeah.
that's fair. It can certainly be 2 works.
I'd probably Anna made me this very early drawing a long time ago. I'd probably grab that, and then, I mean, some of them are so large. Like I'm being so literal with it, but I have this really beautiful Hilary Peckus work that is like a big staple that I would probably grab too.
Great.
Yeah, since we only have 2, and I don't like to have young kids at my house because I don't want anything broken or, magic marker on it. And like when they come, I'm like, you can't touch anything. You sit in that corner. But I have a work by Simone Leigh. It's just so wonderful to live with. I'd have to grab that one. Another work by a friend of mine too is really special to me, so I'd grab that one too.
Okay, great. And last question here. If there's an artist you could go back in time and meet and spend time with and do a studio visit, who's no longer with us, who might that be?
There's so many I want to say, but they're all so dark that I don't even know if they'd be that nice. But I'd probably say Pollock only because of his relation to the Hamptons, and I grew up going there, and I visited that house a bunch of times, and just kind of hearing his stories about Clement Greenberg and all those people that kind of shifted the way that we approach looking at art, which is very, what do you see immediately? And that's kind of my approach with art. So I think he'd be a good storyteller.
Yep.
That's a great pick.
Yes.
I think I'd like to see some of the old masters at work, like the old masters, like maybe Titian or something like that. I think I'd go way back in time.
Yeah.
Avoid any of the Black Plague times.
Only just temporarily dip in and then you dip out.
I'd have my time machine stop in a healthy era.
So definitely. And then the last thing you've said, you've been so generous with everything you've said, and I think if I was a new collector, let's say sitting in the audience, I would have gotten a lot of really good information out of everything you said. So big thank you to both of you for that. But if there's kind of one key piece of advice you might give to a collector just starting out, who again might feel sort of intimidated about how does one approach this, how does one get educated? What piece of advice might you give?
I would just say, like, this is supposed to be really fun and it's supposed to be an extension of yourself. And so many people can give you advice on so many different directions, but it's such a personal experience. And you're going to make some mistakes, you're going to miss some things, you're going to overpay, and you're probably going to feel stupid at some point. But the reality is, arts existed for a very long time from all spectrums of socioeconomic classes and genders and race. And there's no right answer to do everything. Just have fun with it and roll with it and take it as a big life learning experience, because hopefully when you collect, these things will be with you forever and kind of represent different moments of your life, some more painful, some more joyful, and it all is kind of a tapestry of who you are. So just have fun.
Yeah, and I would say that easy ways to start are just going to galleries or even going on their website and just looking at the artists that they have. It's a great way to start to see what's happening now. And some galleries also have, estates of artists. You can learn about maybe what's happened in the, not so distant past. And then also just watching things. Having a story is easier to remember than like all these facts. So there's so many great films and documentaries and even on YouTube, little clips you can watch, and those stories start to stick. And then if you start to read things, and that whole thing comes together. So I find that's the easiest way to get started, and even a great way for anyone who's been at it a long time.
Yeah. That's very beautiful. I want to thank you both so much for being so open and sharing so much and for doing this with me. Thank you. Big thank you to Venus and
Thank you.
Sophia.